AngellXLuci, welcome to my video. Today we're going to talk about bad album packaging. So let's get started. Now first off, I'd like to make a little disclaimer. All of these are just my opinions. It's very well possible that other people do like these packaging things. I personally am not a fan. So let's get started. Okay, so first thing I want to show is the Crazy in Love special edition for ITZY. Now, it's not even that much the thing that's inside the plastic that bothers me. And the plastic is impossible to get off, which is kind of annoying. Like, it's not this that I mind. I'm perfectly okay with this. What I do mind, however, is that the sticker that seems to be rather important for this album, because it's the thing that says, oh, this is a special edition and stuff, is not on the actual album, but on the plastic surrounding it. Which means that if you want to keep the sticker, you kind of have to keep the plastic. Which also means that every time you want to open this album, you're going to have to put the plastic back around once you're done, which sucks. Like, if they would have put that exact same sticker on the actual album and not the plastic surrounding it, I would have been perfectly fine with it. But because they chose to put the sticker on the plastic, I absolutely hate it. And I'm pretty sure the photo book special edition also had that, so I'm also not a fan of that. So that's the first one. Now for the second one, I'm going to show these two at the same time, because they have a very similar issue. And that is, so both of these have this like paper thing around the album, and what happens when you put the albums like in a line in your shelf, things will get stuck on the edges of that paper, which means the paper gets kind of damaged. Well, actually these two aren't too bad yet, but you can kind of see that it's starting to peel up on this side. And that's simply because every single time you try to put a different album next to it, it's going to get caught in that little paper thing. And I truly do not understand why they couldn't just print that on the album. Also, these things are also a pain to get back around. Like, look, this would have looked perfectly fine if they would have just printed this on the album. And not on like a different paper thing. And what's the use of this anyway? Because like the front and back of the album are literally the same with and without the border. It's just that when you put the border around it, more of the image gets cut off. So why does that even exist in the first place? Right? So that's another thing I dislike. Now, next I do want to show you another one with a little border, which is Triple H. Now, this border, because this thing is loose, like, this thing is loose. Now, this doesn't have the issue of when you're putting an album next to it getting caught, because it's in the horizontal direction and not in vertical direction. This, however, has the issue that it is not, like, it's incredibly difficult to get this back around the album. Like, see me struggling? Just watch me struggle for a sec. Come on, we can do this. Just go back in. Yeah, and this is why so many of these albums are damaged when you try to buy them secondhand. Because either the yellow thing will be damaged, or like the corners here or on the top will be damaged. You can see mine is kind of damaged on top too. And that's 100% because someone attempted to put the band around multiple times and the album got damaged while doing that. And again, why do we need the border? It would have looked perfectly fine without the border. Can companies just stop doing those borders? Because it doesn't add anything to the album. So, I'm not a fan of borders, can you tell? Okay, so this one kind of ties into the same issue as the other ones. However, in my opinion, this is worse than the other things with a border. Simply because for the other ones, you can technically just take the border off, and in doing that, take the problem off, essentially. However, for this one, you can't really do that. And that's because if I were to keep the album outside of the box, first of all, you're going to have the CD separate, which looks a little weird in my opinion. But that also means that this slides right off. This is not actually inside of the, again, the border. So you'd have to keep it without that as well, probably. And at that point, where we have another border. And keeping all of these books separate is also going to look weird. So no matter how you choose to keep this album, it's going to look weird. So I keep this in the box, actually. With this one you can see, and this same thing happens with the other albums that have borders. This is just completely messed up, this side. And that's simply from putting albums next to it. And it's so stupid, because why couldn't anyone design anything that looks slightly different? Like, why didn't we put like a plastic thing over this? That would have solved the issue. This is starting to sound a lot more like a rant than a video. What's next? Yeah. So next is just straight up fragile packaging. Because like this is completely broken on both sides here. And that's simply because the way this was shipped put a lot of pressure on the top of it, literally causing the album to collapse. And then there's also the issue of this like band that's around it, which takes a lot of force to take it off. So you could also just accidentally crash the album while trying to take the border off, which just doesn't make sense in my opinion. Now everything inside the album looks nice otherwise, but I think they should have filled it up just a little bit more, because the reason things will collapse is because there's this tiny little space in between the top of the stack of stuff and the actual top. So you can see that when this closes, there's still a little bit of space left, see? And that causes the top of the album to crash down on everything else. I am going to put this on off camera because I cannot put that on again. So yeah, when you're doing something like that, just make sure it's sturdy enough to actually support that. Because 80s albums look very similar, like they also have similar box-like things going on, and their albums don't collapse because they're actually made to be shipped like that. So, I think we're now on to the last thing that I would like to talk about, which is ridiculous shapes. So, by ridiculous shapes, I mean essentially everything that doesn't quite line up with the artist's other albums. So, for Twice, they started off with this like square-sized album. And then page 2 was sort of similar, but not quite. Like, let me get a page 2 album so you can see. See, page 2 was similar, just slightly smaller and slightly more square. But at least it's sort of close. So these two together would still look good in a shelf. And after that, they started releasing like, you know, the regular rectangle shape, so no longer squares. And because there's like, I think only 2 or 3 different albums that are square for them, those are going to look weird, because when you put the albums against the back of your shelf, they're going to stick out. Like the square ones are going to stick out. So you're going to always have to like you can't put the albums against the back of your shelf if you don't want these to stick out. Which is a pain, honestly. And that exact same thing happens with GOT7's Identify, which they also chose to release in 2 completely different sizes, by the way. Which I also don't fully understand. Like, why? This is the same album. Why is this 2 different sizes? But again, they are, like, this one is more square than the others, and this one, although it looks similar to the others, it's still slightly wider, I guess, than the other ones are. So these 2 are going to stick out. Now, the pizza box is just ridiculous. Like, this added so much shipping for everyone, like so much shipping costs for everyone, simply because of shipping the pizza box. When in reality, this is the album. And then there's just all kinds of weird random crap in there. Like, why do we need this? This is useless. And while we're at it, just casually bashing ITZY's packaging, can we just agree that ITZY's member CD plates absolutely suck? Because, like, ITZY's CD plates will look like this. This is a random member CD plate. However, you can't really tell what member this is. Like, I'm pretty sure this is Yeji. But there's not really anything in the picture to tell you that, other than a hand. And they first started that during Guess Who. And for that album it was kinda cute, because for that album it was like, oh, guess who this member is? Because that matched the title. For Crazy in Love, it doesn't make sense at all. So why is that still like this? And these CDs are actually printed like fully in color, so it's still doable to see whose hand it is. Like, I'm pretty sure that's Yeji's hand. However, just quickly moving on to the next album. However, for Checkmate, the CDs weren't fully, like, they're not printed in full color. So this is what you get. Just let me know, whose CD plate do you think this is? Because it's literally impossible to tell. Like, the only way to know which CD plate it is to literally have a template of all CD plates with their names next to it, and just figure out which one you have. And I'm not really against CD plates, like Twice does CD plates too. But when Twice does CD plates, they'll do it like this. This is also a random member CD plate. However, I can instantly tell who this person is. For this, not so much. So, that's something I think is just weird. Like, why do you put in these CD plates? You're clearly wanting them to be something random, something member related, but in reality it's a blurry mess. A very blurry mess. So that's a little, that was a little sidetrack actually, but that's the CDs. Now this album is also a shape that I dislike, simply because it's actually slightly too tall to fit in shelves. Which sounds weird, but I'll show you like a picture of what it looks like. And it's not like, it's bigger than most other albums. It's not the same size as like Twice's Yes or Yes albums or as the bigger albums Stray Kids releases. It's way bigger than that. So actually, let me bring Retrofuturism back. So this album is the size most of the like bigger albums are. And you can see that it's much less tall than the ITZY one is. And it's not just ITZY that does those big ones, by the way. I'm pretty sure GOT7 has also done that, and I think Twice's Fancy You is the same size as this. And those are just so ridiculously tall that they don't really fit in shelves well. So I actually had to like make my shelves taller than I wanted to, just to fit these in. And the other albums are not that tall. And that's one more thing that I would like to talk before wrapping this video up, is that I highly prefer when artists make like similar sized albums throughout their career. So I'm going to like put up pictures of my shelves in editing when I do this. And what you'll see is that for ITZY, most of their albums are the same size, right? For Stray Kids, for ATEEZ, most of them are the same size. They're usually usually a group will have 2 different sizes, I think. And all of their albums are kind of close to that size. However, if you look at GOT7, or if you look at Twice, literally all their albums are a different size. Like, there is not a single one that's the same size as the previous one. And, like, I made GOT7 look like they're all the same size. I have become very good at that. But they're not. They're actually slightly smaller with each album. Like, the only ones that are the same size are the, like, not square, the, like, taller ones. Those are the same size. But the other ones, none of them are the same size. So that's the last thing that I really dislike about some album packaging, is when companies or artists keep doing different size albums. Like, it would be so nice to be either a Luna or a Mamamoo collector, simply because their albums are always the same size. And I don't mind having like 2 different sizes or 3 different sizes even, for like some bigger albums, some normal albums and jewel cases, for example. I don't mind that. But what I do mind is the little staircase I have going on for GOT7. I do mind that. Quite a lot. Now, you didn't hear me talk about Plastic Bag for ITZY in this video. And that's because, you know, the entire internet has bashed that already. I don't feel like I need to add to that. However, if you do own the album and it does bother you, one little tip I'm going to give you: just take it out of the plastic bag, store the little books that are in it as like normal albums, and the CD as a jewel case, and it looks 10 billion times better. So just take that one out of the bag. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I'll see you again next week. Bye bye!